The 12th.
And that's what I want to know.
Started.
Did you mute us? How do we mute? I forget.
Things down here, but leave it be for now.
I'm muted. That's
All
what
right,
you-
nobody's muted.
No, it's not muted.
All right, thank you for coming. Sorry you're so far away. I'm just trying to work with what they gave us. All right. So everybody, please make sure you sign in. So we've got you. Any new members want to say hello? We've got a couple new faces.
Hello.
Hi. Hi, welcome aboard.
Hi.
Are you East Point residents?
We are year
Very good.
round.
Excellent. Great to have you. Great to have you. And over on my right here?
No,
You guys,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. See, okay, great.
Doobie was coming, but I don't know where he is.
Ah, all right, so, for your calendars, May 23rd will be next time. No, I don't know what the movie is yet. Figure it out. And, okay, so again, new people, I'm Ed Katz. So I do catnip marketing by day and I do theater and film things at night. Katz Reviews is my website and Facebook page. And also Ed Katz, I'm on YouTube, and we've got a whole bunch of these discussions recorded on YouTube. And the one for the conversation already has over 30 views. So that's great. All right, so for those on Zoom, please just kind of wave if you want to participate in a moment and kind of flag us down. There you go. Thank you. And tonight we're discussing, I hope I can pronounce this right, from 1993, Krystof Koslowski's Three Colors Blue. I know some of you had trouble getting on to Max. I hope that got remedied, but I'm not the best tech, but I was able to do it. But if you use your phone, it tends to make it easier to sign in initially. All right, so let's start by saying who thought, thank you, who thought the movie, will you guys sign down here? Just make sure. Who thought the movie was well done and effective storytelling? Okay, most, definitely most. Not all, but all pretty close. All right. Who did not think it was effective as a movie, what it was trying to accomplish, which we're going to discuss?
I'd like to know what you were trying to accomplish. So.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Right.
Just saying here.
You know, it's a fair point. It's a fair point. Okay. All right, so really nobody's raising their hand for that. And who thinks it was like so-so as far as well done? Okay,
I just didn't understand some of the point to the whole thing.
okay.
It was very, very slow moving.
Yeah, it was a character study. It wasn't fast, that's for sure.
Showed her face.
I mean, she's a fabulous actress.
Right.
I appreciated it, but.
Yeah, we'll
I'll
discuss
get
that.
discussion.
Yep, that'll definitely be the discussion.
I
Yes.
thought that it had to be slow moving to go through the grief that she was going through. You couldn't
point.
do it 1, 2, 3.
Right, we had to kind of see her go through the grief, and that did take
She
some
was gonna
time.
kill herself. You couldn't do that.
Right,
Yeah,
correct.
but I guess I just didn't understand. I guess I didn't understand the character so well, you know, but
I'm not sure she understood herself so well until the end.
yeah.
So, yeah, but okay, that's also a good point.
I did think that the scarcity of dialogue made it feel even more slow moving.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think, I don't know if it's true of all foreign films, but it does seem like a lot of foreign films have less dialogue.
Not the Spanish ones.
Not that-
But yes, Swedish films like Bergman's and some Italian ones can be kind of talky too, but yeah, French, not so much. That's true. Okay, thank you. Yeah, but also, you know, character studies tend to be that way. Sometimes independent movies can be that way too, and this was, you know, I tried finding out what the budget was for the movie, and it was, nobody could really say. They seemed to think it was kind of put together for all three films, that it was budgeted initially for all three. But I did find the box office, and the three films total, it wasn't separated out, made a little over 6 million worldwide. In 1993, what's that worth? Maybe 12, maybe 15 million now. So they didn't do great, but they didn't do totally terrible. And you can see it wasn't like a big budget production. I'm sure half the budget was Juliette Binoche's salary. And I'll get to her more on this in a bit. But all right, so who liked the movie? I did want to ask that too. Liked it.
Well, I liked it a lot. So.
All right. So about 2/3 here, not so much there, but 2/3 here. Okay, and because we've got about what, 20, 25 here? 20, something like that. All right, and who did not like it?
So like.
Okay, so. All right, so nobody totally didn't like it, but there were a few so-sos. Okay. All right, so now Sheila and Marty were the ones who suggested, so I got to put you guys on the spot. First, what made you suggest the movie? And then I want to hear what you liked about it.
Well, I voted for that movie when you
Yes.
had it 4 or 5 months ago.
Right,
So I wanted it then. back
got it.
then.
Okay,
I happen to like foreign movies. I love French movies. That's my native language.
Right.
So there was a lot of stuff. So,
all right. And what did you like about this film?
well, I thought the character study was incredible. And watching it, the scenery was beautiful, the chateaus and all of that.
Mhm.
So I like her. I like Juliette. You know, I've seen her in a lot of movies. So it was a whole combination.
Okay. Anyone else?
Had you seen it before
No,
you voted for
but I
it? Oh,
wanted to see it
okay.
and I voted for it, but he didn't choose it.
Well, that was a vote,
Yeah.
so it was everybody who
Yeah.
choose it. So, and the reason I selected it is because I hadn't seen it before. But, when I was in Connecticut, I was doing theater and film reviews for a radio station for a couple of years. And there was, a man who was doing the theater and film reviews for the newspaper in Bridgeport, the Connecticut Post. And he raved about the three of them. He thought they were terrific. And, he strongly recommended that I check it out because I was totally unfamiliar with Koslowski. And he said, it's a great place to start. He also has another film series that was very highly acclaimed called, I think it was The Decalogue. It was like 10 sort of 45-minute to 1 hour movies kind of as a combination. And that's been called brilliant too. But he likes this trilogy. And the one to start with is Blue because that was the first one. And we'll get into the meanings of the colors shortly. But like I said, I had never seen it, heard really, really good things. I looked it up on Rotten Tomatoes. All the movies were in the 90s for the 90 percentile for the reviews. So I'm thinking, okay, this sounds pretty intriguing.
What did you think about it?
I liked it. I wouldn't say it was a great movie to me. I thought it was a very good movie. I'd give it like 4 stars out of 5.
Pretty good.
Yeah, oh yeah, it was definitely good. And there were several unresolved things that were kind of gnawing at me, but when I watched it the second time, I appreciated the visuals more because I think the first time you see it, you can't really absorb all that's going on because there is a lot visually. While the pace of the movie is not necessarily quick, I think what he's doing visually kind of goes kind of quickly. So I think it was harder to absorb the first time, and after you've gotten some familiarity seeing it the first time, seeing it the second time, seemed to make it come to me a little better because it's hard to actually describe some of the things he was doing rather than creating feelings with how he used color and light and shadow. It was more getting feelings. So what I did want to say, there was a note, oh, I moved it, shoot, I moved it. Yeah, I want to find this because it kind of sets up, oh, here it is. Is this it? Okay, right. What does the blue represent in 3 colors blue? That's what I want to answer.
Liberty. Liberty.
Right,
Right.
right. So it's the 3 colors of the French flag, blue, red, and white. And liberty is the blue, égalité is number 2, white, and fraternity is the red, number 3. So the freedom part from the liberté, that's what was fascinating about this movie, because ordinarily my connotation with the word freedom is very positive. That's not necessarily the case in this movie. when her husband and her child are killed in the crash, that's a freedom for her. And that's made very clear in the way the movie's been made. It's not necessarily a good thing, but it does free her from the constraints of the family that she had. So, and it's something that I didn't quite get until reading some of the reviews and other things I was reading about it.
Freedom, just another word.
Yeah, Janet Straub
Yep.
said it all. That's exactly it.
Yep, good point, Bart, good point.
It seemed like she was more left adrift
Yeah.
than free. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess it has some similarities in meaning.
Well, freedom from being tethered,
Freedom
well,
from.
which would be like put you adrift, right?
Right.
Yeah,
I thought the blue was like depression, like.
that's what I first thought,
That's what everyone-
right, that's what I first thought, and I think to a degree, there is that woven in there,
Yeah,
but certainly not exclusively.
well, I wish I had known that, what you just said, because I would have looked at the film differently.
Gotta see it again.
Yeah, it's gonna take two
Yeah.
viewings.
Why then, from that blue and from the depression, then we all assumed blue was that, I did at least. What changed? When did that change? When did she all of a sudden? Like, when did that, there was a big change, right?
There were actually a few changes, I thought, yeah, and it was gradual.
Yeah, what?
To depression to kind of independence,
Okay.
right?
Acceptance.
And not really dealing with the loss.
She didn't cry till the end.
And there was a scene where she says to her servant, one of her servants, why are you crying? And she says, because you're not,
Right.
which I thought was, very poignant. Yeah.
Do you actually think she was constrained in her relationships with her husband and her child? Or that the
Well,
freedom was-
obviously, the
freedom was
relationship
a
wasn't,
reaction to the sudden death?
right, but the relationship wasn't 100% great because he had been having an affair for a long time. So
She didn't know how
he wasn't aware, which I think is also another symbol that they were having a problem, because if he's having an affair for a long time and she had no idea, that's not a good thing either.
But she was also having it.
Well, that's a question. I don't know if that's 100% sure that she was.
Well,
I think.
I think
But who was the guy?
But they have. worked
Olivia.
together
Well, you
before.
did, yeah, that's-
I don't think they got together.
I didn't think they got
Which is
together
not
before,
possible.
but there was definitely some sort of an interaction, some chemistry they had. Yes, Elizabeth.
He needed her.
He needed her.
He couldn't.
she
leave
needed
her.
him.
She
You
needed-
mean her husband who died?
Husband who died
Oh.
needed her. She wrote all the music.
Well, that's
Oh.
not 100% resolved either.
What?
That's a question. And I tried getting resolution on that from what I read, and it was not clear. They said it's implied in a couple cases, but it's not made clear that she did write it.
So how come she could write the music later?
Well, that doesn't mean
He
she
was a co-writer.
wasn't, she may have been a co-writer. That was what I got. My impression was she was a co-writer.
Yeah.
She was like an editor to his music, I
No, I
thought.
think it was
Yeah,
more
yeah.
than
I think it was a co-writer,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
part of the freedom that she felt because she didn't have to write it anymore.
Right.
I thought she was the arranger of,
Yeah.
because she helped them to decipher these
And pick which
orchestrations.
instrument should
Yeah,
be in and out,
exactly.
right?
Well,
So
because
she
she wrote it.
Yeah.
Because she was in on it, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm raising my hand because I need to try to get a full thought out. And I need a second to do that. But when it comes to the idea of freedom, I was trying to figure out why that was called freedom, because I had read in advance, so I knew that that meant freedom. And I just, besides Janis Joplin's quote, it was, imagine if you are completely free of everything in your life, all of your attachments, your possessions, everything. And you could start your life fresh, from scratch, all over. And I thought that that's possibly what he meant by freedom. I thought, what an interesting thing. If I could start my life again with like a blank slate, what would I do? Would I do anything differently? What would that be like? But then I thought, but it's not just a blank slate. It's her huge loss.
Mhm.
So losing suddenly her family, her husband and her daughter, and so you're starting life out fresh, but not, because you're coming from this huge loss.
Right.
So what on earth, would that possibly be like? just amazing, and she was in such a good shock, that's why she wasn't
Right.
talking or communicating. or
Right,
anything.
right.
Yeah,
All right, there's more I want to get to, but just to address kind of what you're saying, the other thing I thought was really fascinating. Do you remember the scene when she first gains consciousness in the hospital?
yeah,
With the close-up of the eyes, she's
Right.
blinking, you see
Yeah.
the doctor from her perspective. You saw how she reacted to the death of her child.
mhm.
It was different from how she reacted to the death of her husband. She was seemed much more concerned about losing the child than the husband.
But
Yeah.
that
So-
could be a very natural instinct.
Yes.
If you ask most mothers,
Yeah.
losing their child
Sure.
is much harder than losing their
I
spouse.
believe that, but I also think in context with the other things we saw about their relationship that she must have had with her husband, it just kind of also kind of further reinforces that they did not have a great relationship.
Yeah, but we didn't know that coming in.
No, but when you figure it all out and you see the whole thing in total, I think it kind of indicated.
Are you sure you're not imposing some American value on this mistress relationship? It's very different in France. isn't it?
That's true, but you saw her reaction to it was kind of like most of us, I think, would react to it. Originally not have, but she
She
saw.
wasn't angry about it when she thought about it.
Yeah, she was surprised and I think somewhat hurt, angry, maybe not like furious, but there was definitely a burning there.
It's not like a Karen McDougal thing.
I don't know that one.
Some mistress.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. So, all right, so I want to go back to some things on on Koslowski, which I think will help inform some of this too. Though frankly, maybe not as much as it could have with other directors, but, okay, so the movie came out in December of '93 and it won the Golden Lion in Venice for Best Actress. So Juliette Binoche won. It also in the Golden Globes, it had 3 nominations, including Best Foreign Language Films. And the César Awards, 3 awards, 9 nominations, including Best Film. And 1994, it actually won the European Best Film Award. I thought that was kind of interesting. So now Koslowski, interestingly enough, he graduated from Łódź Film School, and it's Łódź because he was Polish. He was born in Warsaw in 1941, and he died in Warsaw in 1996. Basically, so he made these 3 films and retired, lived for 2 years, and died of a heart attack. And he wasn't that old. He was what, 55?
So he did the other series before these.
Well, he did the Decalogue, which I'm not real familiar with, other than it was 10 films. And I really don't know much more about it. And people were trying to figure out what the connection was between the 10 of them. And some said, well, like several of them seem connected and others don't, but I don't know. I'm curious, but I don't know if I want to watch all 10, but I may start it and check it out.
As long
So
as it's not on Max.
you're right. So like I said, he graduated from Łódź Film School in '69, became a documentary, TV, and feature film director and scriptwriter. He made some short documentaries, did some TV work, took the Grand Prix at the Mannheim Film Festival in '75 for a film he did, a TV movie called Personnel, which they translated in English to The Staff. Okay.
Yeah, that is the stuff.
His first feature-length film was The Scar in '76, and he made the famous documentary From a Night Porter's Point of View in 1979. Now, I heard of the movie The Night Porter, but this is not that at all. And then he also did a film called Camera Buff, which was acclaimed in Poland and abroad, and from that point on, everything he did was very highly regarded. Now, he was married to only once, which is rare for a director of the ones we've discussed. And he had 1 child, a daughter. He was filming 3 colors white while editing 3 colors blue and writing 3 colors red. So he really did kind of make these at the same time. Now, the interesting thing, I told you he graduated from Łódź Film School. He didn't get in the first 2 times he applied. He got in the 3rd time. And he actually had a funny quote about that. I was happy when I got into film school. I'd simply satisfied my ambition to show them I could get in, nothing else, although I do believe they shouldn't have accepted me. I was a complete idiot. I can't understand why they took me, probably because I tried 2 times. So I thought that was a pretty funny, he had a few funny quotes. He said he likes chance meetings. Life is full of them. Every day without realizing it, I pass people whom I should know. At this point in this cafe, we're sitting next to strangers. Everyone will get up, leave, and go their own way, and they'll never meet again. And if they do, they won't realize that it's not for the first time. He talked about Bergman, how he identified with Bergman and what he says about life and love. He identifies with his attitude towards the world. He also talked about Tarkovsky as one of the great directors. And he said, but what does he want in life? And he said, calmness. You can only aspire to it. The path is interesting. Who am I? A retired film director. That's the truth now. Let's see. Okay, on retirement. From time to time, one ought to look objectively at life. When you achieve something, you don't actually realize you've achieved anything. It's only afterwards when you've lost it that you realize you've lost it. And I think that may have something to do with explaining a little of the character of Julie. I thought that quote was kind of fascinating as far as shedding some light on his character. And he was a co-writer, but I really didn't see much on his co-writer. So let's see, here I have his name here.
Wasn't there something about Soviet censorship
Well,
during his career?
yeah, but he was in Poland. I'm not sure.
That was a Soviet-controlled non-country.
I'm not sure. I didn't see anything about censorship. He seemed to have a free reign with what he did from what I saw. So, Krystof, yeah, another Krystof Piesowicz was his co-writer, and I'm not familiar with him. Okay, and then some of his other quotes. What did he have? Yeah, he talked about what he learned at film school. He said, you learn the history of films, the history of aesthetics, photography, how to work with actors. You learn everything one step at a time. Of course, you can't learn any of these things from theory alone, apart from the history. You simply have to experience them for yourself. There's no other way. The whole idea of the school is to enable you to watch films and to talk about them, nothing else. You have to watch films, and because you're watching them and making them, you're always talking about them. It doesn't matter whether you talk about them during history lectures or lectures on aesthetics, or even if you talk about them during English classes, it's all the same. What's important is that the subject is always present, that you're always talking about it, analyzing, discussing, and comparing. And then he was asked about stealing ideas. And directors have had lots of different takes on that. And music writers also. So he goes, nor do I think there's anything wrong in stealing. If somebody's gone that way before and it's proved to be good, then you have to steal it immediately. If I steal from good films, and if this later becomes part of my own world, then I steal without qualms. This often happens completely without my being aware of it. But that doesn't mean that I don't do it. It did happen, but it wasn't calculated or premeditated. It's not straight plagiarism. To put it another way, films are simply part of our lives. We get up in the morning, we go to work, or we don't go to work. We go to sleep, we make love, we hate, we watch films, we talk to our friends. We experience our children's problems or the problems of our children's friends. And the films are there somewhere too. They always stay somewhere within us. They become part of our own lives, of our inner selves. And they stay with us. I steal takes from films, scenes, or solutions, just as I steal stories, and afterwards I can't even remember where I stole them from.
And what about the changes that she went through in her life?
And let me get to that a little bit later. I never really think where I put the camera. It comes naturally to me because he had some really unique shots. And I thought that his composition for the film was pretty creative. I don't analyze and I don't contrive. If you haven't got your own compass within yourself, which clearly points you in a certain direction, then you won't find it. And it doesn't depend on any film school or anything you might learn in film school. Everyone has some kind of a compass inside them, a clock that is closely connected with their instinct, not so much with their head. This clock tells every single person what is allowed and what is not allowed, when we should stop and when we can go on. We have to listen to it unconditionally. If you betray it, you betray yourself. Now, this was a really fascinating part. He goes, I made a documentary once entitled Talking Heads. It's in 1980. I asked people two questions. Who are you and what do you want? Afterwards, I asked myself those questions. I realized I didn't have any answers. I don't know who I am and I don't know what I want. If anything, I'd like some peace and quiet. Again, I think that last quote goes a lot to what we saw of the character of Julie. She didn't have questions when she was confronted with just who she was without the context of her family. And she, he just said, I just like some peace and quiet. What did she do? Changed her name, moved, and kind of tried to change her identity and lived alone. Wanted to be on her own for a while.
I'm noticing that that's more dialogue than the whole movie. I mean, I'm serious, it's a joke, but the fact is that he explained it all, but the movie was not explanatory. It was all visual and.
Right, it was explanatory visually.
Yeah.
Sort of.
But this is him talking about.
Yeah, yeah, right, exactly. All right, and then, of course, anyone have any comments about Koslowski?
Well, he said people should take their time in exploring themselves,
Right,
and I think that's what the movie is.
exactly,
about.
exactly,
Yes.
right,
Yes.
totally agree, yeah.
I'm thinking a trilogy versus a sequel. He was thinking of these things at the same time. Do you have to see all three of these to be able to put it all in perspective?
And I'm glad you said that, because I asked Joe Myers, who was the film critic from the Connecticut Post, and he said, no, each film is independent of itself. He said, it does help. There are some reference points.
Mhm.
If you look at the others, that will come back to each of the others, but each one stands on its own.
Yes, because I realized we had seen this probably back in 1969, or was it by 89?
No, 93, came out in 93.
93. And the reason we didn't see, I think we saw white. And we didn't see it because my husband could not stand the pace of the movie. It was just, everything is like a snapshot and then you wait and then it comes and he said, I'm not doing the rest of the trilogy.
Okay,
So,
right, I understand, it's not for everybody, I get it. Okay, so I want to talk a little about Juliette Binoche. She's kind of an interesting person herself. Born in Paris, her father, her mother, sorry, was a director, teacher, and actress, and her father was a sculptor, director, and actor. Her mother was born in Poland, of French, Belgian, and Polish descent, while her father is French. She was only 23 when she first attracted the attention of international film critics with The Unbearable Lightness of Being, which was made 5 years before this one. Roger Ebert, the Chicago Sun-Times critic, wrote that she was for that movie, almost ethereal in her beauty and innocence. Okay, and then she did this after she did a movie with Louis Malle called Damage. She took a sabbatical from filmmaking to become a mother in 1994. She was selected as the heroine of France's most expensive movie ever at the time, $35 million in 1995, The Horseman on the Roof. She was also in The English Patient, and she won her Oscar for Best Supporting Actress from that, and also in Chocolat, which I think everyone, probably almost everybody here saw that. Chocolat, and I see it,
Yeah.
most of you.
Yeah.
It's very, very good movie. Jean-Luc Godard became aware of her and cast her in a supporting role in 1985 in Maria and Joseph. That film caused a stir. It's a Godard film, so what a surprise. But it was heavily criticized by the Vatican. It was a biblical adaptation. So after she did these, film offers from America followed, but she largely preferred European productions. She turned almost all the international and American movies down to stay with just what she wanted to do. She was in a relationship with from 1999 to 2003 with a French actor. They became parents to a daughter together. She was already the mother of a son from a previous relationship. Okay, right. She got an Oscar nomination for Chocolat with Johnny Depp. And she settled in Paris with her 2 children. She's never married. She received the prize for Best European Achievement in World Cinema at the European Film Awards in 2019. A couple quotes from her. Acting is like peeling an onion. She's not the first to say it. You have to peel away each layer to reveal another. I want to make films that are political and social, films with a message or an idea, films that dare to ask. Notice she didn't say answer part. If a star is someone who gives light, then I can be a star. But if a star is someone who goes after money in magazine covers, then it's sick and I don't want it. She had a quote saying, French women bloom at 40. I can't wait. My earliest memory is loneliness. That's a hard thing to live with. I've been proposed to 4 times, twice at the beginning of a relationship and twice at the end of a relationship. I've never said no. I just didn't give an answer.
That's an answer.
I believe in coincidences, which is another way of saying there are no coincidences. It's like life winks at you. What seemed important when you are 20, when you are 50 is hopefully not so important unless you haven't grown up. All right. All right. So there was something else. The character of the woman who played the one having the affair. That was, no, it wasn't, no, Emmanuel Riva was her mother with a very small part. Because wasn't that,
I read one
Julie
review
Delpy?
that said the mother was the most free of everybody in the movie because she had Alzheimer's.
right,
Oh.
that's true, yeah, good point. Yeah, so Julie Delpy. Okay, Sandrine, which was Sandrine? So Lucille was the one who was her neighbor, who was called the whore or whatever. Okay, but, yeah, I'm not seeing it here. Anyway, I believe Julie Delpy was the actress who played the woman who was having the affair. She was the pregnant lawyer who had the cross.
The judge.
Well, no, she was a lawyer. She wasn't a judge.
Yeah.
But she was pregnant. She had a cross. And I think it was interesting that the actress's name is Julie. The character of Juliette Binoche was Julie.
Yeah.
So I think the director was doing something a little clever with that,
And they
because.
both had the same necklace.
Yes.
Yes,
that's a
exactly.
point.
And he loved both of them supposedly. Because he definitely loved the mistress. I believe he may have loved the wife certainly at some point. So, all right, I've got some notes on it. And I didn't want to forget that point, so I'll come back to it in a sec. So the opening scene, the car wheel we see on, from the below the car actually is washed in blue. We see the brake fluid leaking, the fog, the car crash. Okay, what I noticed the second time I saw it, you remember the car crash in the tree, up against the tree through the fog?
Mhm.
Do you remember what rolled away?
Soccer ball.
Well, it was like a beach ball,
Yeah.
and it was red and white. So we had the flashes of the blue, and then you see the ball rolling away, which I also thought was, you see like the loss of the child was rolling away, because it was the child's.
Or marketing for the next movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a few things where I saw that critics noted how the colors were used. Like first you see blue, then you see red, then you see white, or like that. Okay, so she did try. Oh, so we see the doctor through her eyes, and she was more upset by her daughter dying than the husband. About her suicide attempt, quote, "I can't do it," she said. Oh, and then the music, the questions about the music.
So before you get to that, she broke the glass before she tried
Correct,
to commit
right.
suicide. She was sending out a warning, so
Right.
she needed help.
Right, she was breaking the glass, which has a lot of meaning, of course, too. Thank you for pointing that out. It's a good catch, Dan. So the music, what was the music that was the unfinished work? What was it for? Do you remember?
The unification of Europe.
The unification of Europe, right,
Yeah.
right. Trying to put the pieces back together, which I thought also kind of relates.
Yes.
But that fellow who was playing the recorder and playing the music,
Yeah.
Yes.
they never really explained how, or even talked about it.
So this is the guy on the street?
The guy on the street.
Right.
That was weird.
Well, remember, I read to you about the quotes about coincidences.
Oh.
Why was he playing that music?
Don't know.
No one knows.
So wait, so was that the paper that they opened up? Was that
I
the
think it
notes
was, I
that
don't
he
know if it was
replaying?
that score or one of his previous scores. I'm not sure. I think they
That's interesting.
intentionally left it unanswered. And the other thing is, we were talking about the color blue, and it's usually associated with, depression, things like that. Well, the color that's most famous the type of music, I should say, that's most famous for Blue would be blues
Mhm,
or maybe jazz.
mhm.
This music wasn't that at all, right?
No.
It was completely different, which I also thought was kind of interesting, because if you're gonna call a movie Blue and you're gonna have music be a central theme, I don't think you would have originally gone with orchestra music.
But
So
it was blue, music was blue in the sense that we think of blue as down and
Hmm.
depressed.
Mhm.
It was very,
Well, but the reunification song
right,
was trying to be more upbeat.
right.
So again, it's kind of unusual, hard to figure out. Now, then, so actually, as you remember when she threw out her husband's scores, we guess it was her husband. And then the reporter comes to her when she's just sitting there recovering and asks if she wrote her husband's compositions, remember? And, did she answer the question? No, she ignored
That's
it.
the first time we hear that.
Mhm.
Right,
So that's the first inkling. we got.
right, it's not the last though. But obviously the reporter had heard it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so, also then she goes inside and she pulls down the blue hanging crystals, some of them,
Mhm.
Yeah.
right?
Why did this other woman know about the crystal? The one who came into the apartment.
Yeah.
Had the same
just-
lamp as a
Why?
child.
Her daughter.
She, right, she had the same lamp as a child, exactly, right.
What?
Good memory, Joel, yeah. She had the same lamp, this woman had the same lamp when she was a child.
You know,
So it's
we talk
fascinating for
about
children.
divesting herself of all possessions and
Mhm.
identity. And one thing she did take was that novel,
So,
the child,
that-
I doubt it was the child's.
But it was blue. It
child.
was also blue.
Right, but you remember the box it was in,
Yeah.
when she bought it? You remember what the box said? Blanco, white,
Oh.
another color. So anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. So then, so, you know, she has the house in the castle. That's not a house, it's a castle, and it's right by the water, again, more blue. And she has the conversation with her attorney. And the first words in the conversation with her attorney, no one must know, ever.
Yeah, what was that?
it's,
They never answered it. Was it that she actually made the compositions, or was it how the money was gonna be dispersed? No idea, right? Or that she was gonna change her identity, or, you know, where the money was going,
What was the account that was going to?
don't know,
To whom?
She
right?
had an account.
She had an account, but there was another one too.
where all the other sales.
For the mother, to pay for the
Right.
mother.
She didn't
Right, one was to pay for the mother, right, right,
She
exactly.
didn't
And her
want that
maid
account.
also.
What,
Take care
Joel?
of her maid.
Yes, she wanted to take care of the staff, right, exactly,
The gardener, yeah.
right, the gardener and the maid, right? Yep. And she was changing her name back. Also, sorry, I wanted to go on this. So then, she throws the composed score in the trash, and then, you remember she gets a lollipop, right?
Mhm.
Which of course was
Crunches it.
blue, and she crunches it, exactly.
I wondered if it was a real lollipop or it was.
Yeah. I don't know, but I'll tell you about something else she did in a second. And then when she goes to, right, and then she calls Olivier for the affair, they have the affair, and she leaves him. And then as she's leaving, like walking out past the wall, you remember what she does?
She
With her hands.
Scrapes her.
Yeah.
Yes.
She wanted it.
She wasn't feeling anything. She wanted to feel something.
Yeah, she was
Exactly,
really-
right,
It's like a cutter.
right, like someone who would cut themselves, right. So, I read about that scene, and they tried it a few times, you know, to kind of stage it. And it didn't look real, and she got frustrated, and she said, I'm just gonna do it. And she really did that, and it took her hand a really long time to heal, like over a
It
year.
looked like she really did.
Yeah,
And I was surprised she really did it.
right, she really did.
Looked
Yeah.
better.
Yep, so I thought that was interesting. So then she goes to Paris. And you remember what she ordered, which apparently was her regular thing, because
Ice
the way.
Coffee and
coffee.
ice.
Right, the mixture of the hot and the cold together.
It looked delicious.
But I thought it was fascinating, because I think that's kind of where her emotional state was. It's a mixture of the hot and the cold, and she's trying to put it together. So she changed her name. It's again, freedom to start anew with a new name.
One question.
Sure.
They said she always ordered that.
Right, it's a regular thing, exactly, right. So at her apartment building, her neighbor Lucille there was a petition to try to get her evicted. So she didn't want to sign it. And do you remember why?
Well,
His money get involved.
That's what she said. The more I read, more of the reviewers and people who wrote like extensive pieces on it were saying it was her appreciating someone else wanting some freedom and backing her up for wanting to be on her own and some freedom there. So she backed her, so she said her neighbor is free to do as she wants. And they showed her again being that way. Well, they didn't completely show it, but they said, you know, she doesn't wear underwear, another sense of freedom. Lucille, the neighbor, which Juliette Binoche's character found out when she was swimming and came right up to her, oh, you don't wear underwear. She goes, never, and she smiles at her, you know, very proud that she doesn't wear underwear.
She didn't wear it at work either.
Correct. Then there was an unusual scene that I read about where you see an old woman on the street struggling to recycle the bottles. That is one scene that is actually kind of reprised in the other movies. With people going to recycle, and there was another scene where in the next movie, apparently, which I read about, that I don't know if it's the same woman, but someone's trying to recycle and they need a little help, and another character helps them recycle. And then there was something in the other one where they just do it on their own. So it just, I don't know what the symbolism is, but it kind of carried through.
But she's recycling her life.
Right, but this is as an old woman, so it kind of goes back to that, I guess. The cycle of life, you know?
Ed,
Yes,
I thought it was that Juliette's character could watch this woman struggle
right.
and still was not able to muster up the empathy that it would take to be helpful.
Okay,
So
that's a
no.
good point.
Yeah.
Because what came right after that is something else that kind of goes along with what you're saying. Because that's when she sees the rat in the closet with the baby rats, right?
Mike.
And how did she handle that?
Mike.
She got somebody else.
She couldn't do it.
Oh, she borrowed a cat.
So she borrowed a cat, and then Lucille said, I'll clean up the mess, so she didn't have to deal with it, so that goes right with what you were saying. And that literally happened right after in the film. Okay,
I thought it reminded her of her children.
that's the other thing, yes, seeing the baby, she had a hard time with, right, and which, same thing in the pool, when all the little kids came in, oh,
Yeah.
she had to get out of there, yeah.
And they were wearing white.
And red.
And red, yeah, a little floaty thing, right, exactly, yep. Okay, so, yeah, so then she finds out her husband had the affair.
But she
And she
found out in
goes,
a very weird way. Come on.
yeah, well, she kind of saw it from the TV news clip. That gave her the
Yeah.
clue.
Where Lucille was working. I mean, it's not the.
No, it was through the window, I think of in the next building, maybe. I couldn't tell if it was the next building or not. The TV was on, I think in the next building.
Maybe she's a peeping Tom.
So anyway, she finds out she wants to meet her. And then you remember what the woman says, the pregnant woman, will you hate me now? Which I thought was an interesting thing to say. And she, of course, didn't answer the question again. So Olivier wants to tell the world that she or he wrote the song. But he wants someone to say it. He wants her to say something about it. And then they go to the end of the movie, and the words are, if I have not love, I am nothing. Love is not proud. Love bears all things, endures, never fails. Knowledge shall come to an end. Faith, hope, and love. The greatest is love. And then we see all the people whose lives she touched. Close up goes back to her eyes, and then finally she cries. And then what does she do after she cries? She actually smiles a little bit. And that's how the movie ends. So I think that kind of goes with, coming full circle, how she's able to reconcile what's happened and move on. And she actually helped, she was gonna do something to help the woman with the baby.
She gave her the house.
She gave her the house, right? Yes,
So let's talk about the contrast of meeting the woman who was
right,
her husband's concubine, and in France and in the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
like the most shocking scene in the movie.
Right.
Why, hello,
Yeah.
my husband.
It just shows a different morality between the two.
Yeah, different take on how to handle that, right?
But
And I don't know if the way she handled it is normal in France. It probably more normal than it would be here. But is it normal for France? I have no idea.
That was so altruistic. And
Right.
She didn't demonstrate a lot of empathy, more apathy as a protective device for her. But to be so empathic toward this.
Stranger who was having an affair with her husband, right? A little surprising. But she did show help, well, she was helpful to Lucille when Lucille called and said she needed her. She actually showed up, right?
But it was also a baby. It was, it's
The
gonna- it's a
mistress
baby.
said
Talking about.
your husband said
Yes.
that you, something about her being
Very good person.
Like a good heart, right?
Plus she gave her the house, didn't she say she's giving the house for her husband's child?
Yeah.
I think it's your husband and child.
Yeah, that's what she said.
Like her husband, I mean.
Doing she did, but I don't think her husband knew.
Be a stepmother.
that She was.
No, he didn't know. They said that.
And she has a son,
You're right.
and she wanted the son of her to own the house.
Right,
It was gonna be his house.
right,
Yes.
right.
A child, it's a child of the.
That's going full circle.
That's it.
Yeah.
Just if you look at it from her face and emotions, she started to come back toward normal with the music.
Yes.
She showed a little, I don't know, lightness of heart.
Spark in her life, yeah.
And then she heard about the mistress and she came down again.
Mm, yeah,
You wouldn't. I wouldn't.
yep. All right, anyone have any thoughts at this point? Want to say anything? Yes, Mary?
Mary.
You have to unmute.
Hi.
Ah,
I'd like to know your thoughts about the fight in the alley. The man being so viciously kicked and beaten up.
I think that's one of those things that, you know, happens in life, that you get kicked around and you run away, or you move on, which is what she did. She got kicked and she ran away. That's my only take I could get from it. Yes,
I would say that it's also an example of how she could observe what's going on in the world, how people are inhumane to each other,
Right.
and she still was able to keep herself separate from it. And
Yeah, she
couldn't
kept detached,
muster up the
true.
emotion.
yep,
She was so benumbed by her loss that she just retreated from the whole world and stayed alone where nobody else could hurt her.
right. Yeah, that's a
I
good take.
wondered how she was gonna stay on that stairs. And she later tells you that she stayed on the stairs for the night and eventually got a key.
Because she got locked out, yeah.
But I wondered, when she was there, I wonder how she's gonna get back in, she's not dressed.
Right.
Where was the bathroom?
And they leave the scene, so you don't know.
Right,
No.
right.
Another thing that left a question, the young boy who witnesses
Yeah.
the accident.
Yes,
Yeah,
brings-
around the corner.
Finds her
Yes.
in all of Paris.
yes,
Yeah.
And brings the necklace back.
yes.
It's a little far-fetched.
Yep, but again,
It's a movie.
you heard the thought that both the director and Juliette Binoche had about coincidences.
Yeah.
So they're okay with it,
And
so I
that
guess we
was
have to
how
be,
she knew that he loved
Right.
the mistress.
correct.
And
Because of the
that's
necklace.
how she was willing to give,
What did you say? That's how she was?
she knew that he had loved his mistress.
Right, right,
So I
Because of that
know
present.
he
Because
loved
it's
you.
the same,
right.
it's the same necklace.
Yes.
Right. All right, so some of the review quotes I see that I thought were kind of interesting. Imran Khan wrote, grand reminders of the little motions that gather slowly but surely to deliver the quick sudden turns that give even the most indolent life meaning. And then in the Times UK, Kevin Maher wrote, the score from Zbigniew Preisner is extraordinary. The opening motorway crash sequence is terrifying, and the final close-up as Julie is ultimately reconciled to her fate is unutterably moving. In Cineview, Patrick Gamble wrote, like delving into a cold cave of human emotion, Three Colors Blue is the jewel in the crown of Koslowski's trilogy. A fascinating examination of freedom, sorrow, and identity, and perhaps one of the most necessary films of contemporary French cinema. He gave it a score of 5 out of 5. In The Guardian, UK, Peter Bradshaw wrote, there was something so rich and spacious and unhurried here. There was a wonderful reach and flair in Koslowski's filmmaking. He gave it 5 out of 5. And that was in That was just now, March of 2023, just a year ago.
And the nature of grief is that there is no timeline.
Mhm, good point,
So
right,
you go through cycles. and you
Everybody's
just take
different in
your
it.
time.
right.
Yeah,
I'm not
Matt-
aware of people handling grief the way she did.
no.
It was different, that's for sure. Matt
Right.
Brunson wrote the first film in the trilogy remains my favorite. He gave it 3.5 out of 4. Brian Susfields in session film, its own color palette accompanied by Zbigniew Preisner's haunting score, which he loved.
Is it called Three Colors Red, Three Colors White?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, 3 colors, white and
And
3
which one
colors
is he
red.
saying was the best?
This one, but not all the critics agreed. Many of
Right.
them did say blue was the best, but some like red, some like white.
I heard that the white was not nearly as good and the red was the best.
See, and I
Yeah.
heard white could be the best, but blue may be the best, so.
So I'll watch white and red.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah. So in the Cinephile Fix, was written, Blue is the rarest of all films, a film that reveals its knowledge on humanity through melodic rhythm and artistic imagery. It should be regarded as one of the most insightful and inventive films ever made, and that was in 2022. Dennis Harvey wrote, Blue is by far the most revelatory, offering a transcendent showcase for Juliette Binoche. That was in 2022 also. In Film Inquiry, Soham Gadre wrote, Blue is the most complete picture in the trilogy in terms of both its metaphorical pronouncements and the visual aesthetic that Koslowski defines them with. It's an intimate meditation centered by a bold, piercing performance from Binoche, who speaks little but tells much through her revealing outward expression. 4.5 stars out of 5. That was from Keith Garland. And then Alan Almakar in The MacGuffin wrote, a devastating look at freeing oneself from guilt. That was in 2020. All right, this film is lifted by the force and inventiveness of its images, while Binoche holds the center with her sad, enigmatic presence. The story of how to become a new, better, more whole self. There was nothing less tragic than that. That was from Tim Brayton, and he gave it a 10 out of 10. Now, Roger Ebert, okay, he has more about Koslowski and after he made the film and the films. He said, after he completed Red, the final film in his trilogy, he announced he would retire. This was not a man weary of work. It was the retirement of a magician, a Prospero who was now content to lay aside his art, quote, to read and smoke, unquote. When he died 2 years later, he was only, it said 56, but he was actually short of 56. Because he made most of his early work in Poland during the Cold War, and because his masterpiece, The Decalogue, consists of 10 one-hour films that do not fit easily on the multiplex conveyor belt, he has still not received the kind of recognition given those he deserves to be named with, like Bergman, Ozu, Fellini, Keaton, and Buñuel. He is one of the filmmakers I would turn to for consolation if I learned I was dying, or to laugh with on finding I would live after all. He often deals with illness, loss, and death, but deep pools of humor float beneath the surface of his films. In Blue, Juliette Binoche plays a young woman whose husband and child are killed in a car crash. After a period of emotional paralysis, she telephones an old friend who has always been in love with her and tells him his chance has come around at last. They have sex. She wants to see if it will help. It does not. She moves to an obscure street in an anonymous corner of Paris, determined to see no one she knows and make no new friends. But as chance would have it, she does meet someone. She meets her husband's mistress.
Can I say something?
Sure.
You know, I like the film much better having heard this discussion. And now I understand that concept of freedom, but it's really bold. It's such a bold concept, because I remember a few years ago, I forget which, an actress was being interviewed on TV, and she said something about how difficult it was to have children, and she received all kinds of hate mail. But this is a fantasy, like what would it be like to start all over,
Right.
not have children? So this is such a bold statement.
Right,
Mhm.
yeah, it was pretty pioneering work, that's for sure. Okay. So Ebert writes a little about the Decalogue, but he's also talking about the writer he collaborated with here, Piesowicz. The Decalogue and the trilogy were written in collaboration with Krystof Piesowicz, a lawyer that Koslowski met during the Solidarity trials. And quote, the director said, meaning Koslowski, he didn't know how to write, but he could talk. So they shut themselves up in a smoke-filled room and talked through the films, all three of them together. He always wrote with Piesowitz. Curiously, he used a different cinematographer for every film. He didn't want them to look as if they all matched. One imagines Piesowitz as the advocate for contrarian views, since the film so consistently resists delivering in the expected way. In the trilogy, blue is the anti-tragedy. That's what he calls it, Roger Ebert, which I thought was an interesting way to put it. White is the anti-comedy, and red is the anti-romance. All three films hook us with immediate narrative interest. They are metaphysical through example, not theory. Koslowski tells the parable, but doesn't preach the lesson. There you go, Bart. It's the same with his Decalogue, where each film is based on one of the 10 commandments, but it's not always possible to say which commandment or precisely what the film is saying about it. He said, I know this because I taught the Decalogue in a film class where we discovered that the order of the commandments differs slightly in the Jewish, Catholic, and Protestant versions, a student side, and in the Koslowski version. Okay, using symbolism that only seems to be helpful, blue, white, and red stand for the three colors of the French tricolor, representing liberty, equality, and fraternity. Juliette Binoche in blue has the liberty after the loss of her husband and child to start life again, or not at all. All right, I'm going to skip this part, so I don't want to get into that.
I'm more confused now than I was.
Okay. All right.
Opposite of what you're saying.
Okay, most films, this is also Roger Ebert, most films make the unspoken assumption their characters are defined by and limited to their plots. But lives are not about stories. Stories are about lives. That's the difference between films for children and films for adults. Koslowski celebrates intersecting timeliness, timelines and lifelines, choices made and unmade. All his films ask why. Since God gave us free will, movie directors go to such trouble to take it away. Koslowski truly loved his characters and invites us into a poignant awareness of both our limitations and our capacity for transcendence. And you can feel that in the tenderness of every frame. Ebert was quoting Annette Insdorf, who was also a film critic who wrote a book on him. But I met her in person, and I have to tell you, I did not like her. I thought she was very full of herself. And actually, another critic mentioned Annette Insdorf and kind of thought she was totally superficial and missed the point. So that was kind of interesting too, since she wrote a whole book on it. All right. Okay. No one else can see the shadows of my former and future. Okay. Sorry. 1 second. Ebert wrote, I connect strongly with Koslowski because I sometimes seek a whiff of transcendence by revisiting places from earlier years. No one else can see the shadows of my former and future visits there, or know how they are the touchstones of my mortality. But if someday as I approach the cafe, I see myself just getting up to leave, I will not be surprised to have missed myself by so little. Koslowski would have understood. A link between all three films in the trilogy is provided by a brief shot of an old lady trying to deposit a bottle in a street trash recycling bin. The slot's a little too high for her to reach. In red, Valentine, the character, tries to help her. The first two movies are set in Paris. What is the old lady doing? Oh, what is the old lady doing in Geneva in the third one? Exactly. That's how he ends his review. So I thought that was kind of interesting too.
What about his last words?
Right.
What about his last words? That was the end, that was the punchline to the joke. And that's the only way you get an insight into their marriage, that she said, oh yeah, he was funny. He always made us laugh. But that was all you knew about him.
That's right. We knew very little. It was all there weren't like, most movies would do flashbacks. If they kill a character,
Right.
you're going to see a bunch of them later through flashbacks.
Yeah.
And this really avoided that, other than a few photos that finally showed up.
Yeah.
So that was a different way to treat
We
it.
know he knew a lot about jokes.
Yeah.
You know, this is a laudatory experience of something totally different than almost everything you've ever presented here. Did this make its way down to the Tisch School at NYU or places like that who supposedly pay attention to these things?
You know, I'm sure it's been discussed in class. I mean, Roger Ebert talked about teaching a course on Koslowski's Decalogue series, so I'm sure these films were brought up in film classes too, and especially if Ebert's putting him in a class with Fellini and Bergman, and I took a course in Fellini in college,
Right.
so I'm sure he's being discussed in film classes. All right, okay, there's another reviewer that got a little time, not really, okay, I'm sorry. There's some other kind of really cool notes, another film critic had, but we're running past, I don't want to keep you guys. All right, there were a couple of fun trivia things, I'll give you real quick and then we can break. This is included in the 1001 movies you must see before you die, so there's another one you can check off.
999
Yep.
left.
It's ranked number 64, non-English speaking film in the critics poll conducted by the BBC 6 years ago. This is the only one of the Three Colors trilogy to be set in France. Oh, in the scene where Julie goes to the court to find her late husband's mistress, for a brief moment she turns towards the camera and the word liberté is visible on the building above her. In the court, the courthouse. I'm gonna skip that. All right, I mentioned that already. The film never clearly states whether Julie or Patrice, her husband, is the real composer of his music. The fact she turns out to be an expert composer suggests that she is the real creator. However, Julie shows Olivier a piece of music left by Patrice, which may indicate that he wrote music too, or she is lying and denying that it was her. We don't know. Near the end, Olivier insists that Julie must publicly reveal herself as the composer of her completion of the symphony, but this does not mean she had also composed the unfinished symphony before his death. Ultimately, it's possible the couple composed music as a team while publicly stating that he was the sole composer.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. Although not explicitly stated, the three films address the three elements of the French motto in that order: freedom, equality, fraternity. The story of Blue explores the theme of freedom by examining what Julie does when, quote, freed from the bonds of marriage and motherhood. She shows respect for the freedom of others by refusing to support the eviction of the prostitute in her building. It is hinted she may be the real composer of her husband's music, suggesting she used him as a front to preserve her own freedom from public attention. However, while she initially pursues freedom by rejecting all ties and emotional bonds to others, she ultimately decides to open her heart to loving someone again, Olivier, and in the final scene, finally feels free to weep for the first time. And that may also be why she was smiling, because she finally cried.
Yes, exactly.
So-
That's,
I thought that was interesting. Okay, anyone else have any other comments?
The other thing she seemed to be free from is finding out her husband had a relationship with someone else. So she didn't, it's not like she just worked through her grief. All of a
Right.
sudden it was a whole new reality
Right,
that kind of freed her.
right, which may have helped her with her grief.
Mhm.
I think at the very end, the music and the words were a very fitting, perfect
Right.
ending.
Yeah, the music was really terrific, but not what I would have expected from a movie called Blue. But I thought it really worked out nicely.
It was hard to tell what music was actually being played and what she imagined.
Well, that's a good point, because sometimes she was hearing it, but you also wonder if she's composing it or remembering it, right? Trying to hear it in her head. And then there was something, and I'm not gonna be able to find it now, but there was a funny point about the music where they identified a piece of music in the movie and it was fictional. It did not really exist. But it was like supposedly some great composer from the late 1800s, didn't exist. It was totally fictional. So I thought that was kind of interesting too, but I just can't find it.
I just
Was
wanted
it his music that they were playing at the funeral?
Yes, it was supposed to be his music, but I don't know exactly what. The chorus from the symphony they used is from 1 Corinthians 13 in the Bible. This was a little bit of trivia. Early in the movie, the banker mentions Julie's bank account ID number 270641-196. The first numbers match the director's birthday. Because they do the day first, the 27th,
Yeah,
6th
right.
month, 1941. When pictures of Patrice were showed on TV, one of them shows him with the famous Bulgarian pianist Alexis Weissenberg. I didn't know that. Koslowski features music, here it is, by the fictitious 17th century Dutch composer Van de Boedenmeijer in this movie, as well as in The Double Life of Veronique, another movie he made in 91. So he was having a little fun with you. Yeah, okay, here's another with the colors. So remember I told you about the box she was carrying saying Blanco, which is Spanish for white. And the next shot, we are looking at her from behind and she pauses in the street as a man in blue passes her on the left and a woman in red passes her on the right. There you go. So, and then, of course, the children in the red and white bathing suits in the blue swimming pool, which we talked about. All right. And there's funny things that the cameraman did to get the blue effects. In some cases, they actually applied blue gel on the film's negative or flashing lights on it. They were doing all sorts of strange things to get the colors. So there's, yeah, he used an unusual technique. It was apparently achieved by wrapping the camera in blue gels, opening its rear and flashing lights directly at the film negative. Just some different things to get the effect. So, all right, that's it. Thank you. And I'll send an email fairly soon about what the movie for May 23rd will be.
Thank you. Good job.
I didn't break off with you. I started from my origin. Thank you.
Thank you. Great suggestion.
So I put this on.
Let me just shut the recording off 1 second. That was great. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
And it goes back.